Okay, good morning everyone. I hope you're all doing well this fine spring morning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is James Long and I'm the Managing Director for radiotimes.com. I'd like to offer you all a warm welcome to our session today. We'd of course love to be doing this in person, and it feels like that time might not be too far away for us all now, thankfully. But we hope this virtual format will suffice in the short term and offer an accessible insight into the current mindset of our UK TV audiences. Before we start, a few housekeeping points for the session. We're aiming for this to last somewhere between 45 to 50 minutes, and we hope you have some questions throughout it. And if you do, please add them as you go along into the Q&A function in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and we'll answer as many of them as we can towards the end. And finally, if you'd like to receive a copy of the presentation or have any more detailed specific questions about anything we talk about today, then please use the contact details in your meeting invite to follow up. Okay, so on to the presentation. Our focus for today is on the 12 months that changed TV. We'll shine a light on the joint challenges we've all faced over the past 12 months as media professionals operating within the TV and entertainment industry, and specifically how lockdown has impacted our audiences, viewing behaviours, and which of these changes might be here to stay. You'll hear from our very own Tim Glanfield, editorial director on radiotimes.com and part-time TV talking head, on how our brand pivoted, innovated and developed exciting new formats and experiences to bring the nation closer to the biggest TV talent this past year. But first, I'd like to hand you over to the wonderful Ali Finnegan, our Insight Director here at Immediate Media, who will share with us her expertise and the key findings of how TV audiences have changed their behaviour this year and which of these may stick around for good. We hope you enjoy this morning's sessions and look forward to seeing you all again in person soon. Ali, good morning. Over to you.
Morning, James. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. As James says, my name is Ali Finnegan. I'm the Insight Director at Immediate, and I'm going to be taking you through a piece of research that we've just done for radiotimes.com. Firstly, to give you some background, obviously the last 12 months have been extraordinary in many ways, and COVID and successive lockdowns have seen some massive changes in behaviour across the UK. While some of this has been very new behaviour that's been quite specific to the pandemic, what we've also seen across a huge number of sectors is an acceleration of behaviour change. Trends in behaviour change that we were already seeing have sped up massively, and we've seen this across so many different areas of the UK. As restrictions start to lift over the next few months, one of the key questions is to what extent has behaviour been permanently changed, or how much will we go back to what we were doing before March last year? TV viewing is one of the areas that's seen enormous change. On one side, the UK population spent half of the last year at home, many people working from home or on furlough. TV has been an important part of people's survival armour to get through this experience. And on the other side, the TV industry has faced many challenges. Production on many shows was completely hit and shut down, and this has had a knock-on effect on TV scheduling. So as the UK emerges from lockdown, hopefully, let's face it, for the last time, RT.com were keen to understand exactly what has happened to TV viewing over the past 12 months, what behaviour has permanently changed, and what the implications are for the TV industry. So that's a bit of background. I'm now going to take you through the research. So the research was done in-house by Immediate's Insight team. We designed research to explore people's TV habits over the past 12 months and how this might impact TV viewing for the future. We did the survey at the end of February, beginning of March, and we ran it across a number of different sources to ensure a good representation of the whole Radio Times audience. We have an in-house panel at Immediate called Immediate Insiders, and we ran this on our Radio Times print and online audiences. We ran it on radiotimes.com via a pop-up and also on social media targeting radiotimes.com visitors. We also sent the survey to an external panel to gain a nationally representative sample of the UK populations for comparison with Radio Times. In total, we spoke to just over 3,500 people. 1,000 of those were NatRep and 2,500 were Radio Times audience. I'm just going to be taking you through a very top line view here today. and focusing on the national representative sample, because that will be that gives us a taste of what's happened across the whole country. We're obviously very happy to provide more detail. We can cut the data in different ways. If anybody wants to follow up with bespoke sessions, then we're very happy to do that. So firstly, we're going to take a look at what actually happened to TV viewing during lockdown. So in entirely unsurprising news, the UK saw a significant rise in TV viewing over the past 12 months. We split our survey into Monday to Friday and then weekends, but in both cases we can see that roughly a third of the UK population have been watching a lot more TV, a third have been watching a little more, and a further third have been watching about the same. Only about 5% said they'd been watching less TV. And overall, when we asked them how many hours they were watching, they've watched 32.5 hours of TV a week. Now, if we look at pre-COVID figures from Ofcom, we can see that average weekly viewing was 22 hours a week. So these figures represent an additional 10 hours of TV a week, working out at about 85 minutes a day. So that's a lot of extra TV that people have had to film. When we look at what formats they've been watching, actually we can see that it's been pretty stable. On demand has been growing its share of viewing steadily over the last few years, but as we can see here, scheduled live TV is still the main form of TV watched in the UK over the last 12 months. There's been a small increase on demand, and actually a slightly bigger one amongst the Radio Times audience, and a slight decrease in recorded TV. But as we'll see later, when we look at the genres of TV that people have been watching, scheduled live TV might have been getting a little bit of help. Looking at catch-up in more detail, we can see that watching TV on catch-up is pretty much universal now. 86% of the population now watch some television on catch-up. Research we did a year ago showed catch-up being used by 83%, so that's actually a 3% increase over the last 12 months. And it's even higher for the Radio Times audience at 91%. And as you can see, although all the channel services are used, BBC iPlayer is still dominant, with almost 2/3 of the UK saying it is their most used catch-up service. Moving on to paid for TV services. What we see is that at the time we did the research, which was about a month ago, 89% of the UK population could access a paid for TV service. And again, research we did a year ago showed paid for access at 79%. So this is quite a significant increase over the last 12 months of 10% in access towards any paid TV service. And many, of course, have access to more than one. Netflix is the most popular service, but also what we can clearly see here is the huge success that Disney Plus had with their launch. They launched on the day that lockdown came in March next year, and saw initial uptake as people looked for more and more content, resulting in 28% of the population being able to access them. Double where Now TV is. We asked people about which device they've been watching television on, more or less, and who they've been watching it. And what we can see is, at first glance, some seemingly contradictory data. I watch more TV on the television set, but also watching more on devices. Watching more on my own, but also more with my partner or children or parents. And when we dug into the data further, and also into the comments that people made in the open-ended questions, we saw a couple of different patterns forming. Firstly, watching TV over lockdown has become an event again for people. People talk about doing family movie nights, watch-alongs on FaceTime with a partner that they don't live in with or with friends, binge watching a series with kind of themed matching drinks and snacks. With everyone at home, sitting down, watching TV together round a TV set has become the social life. And people have made a real effort to do this and have talked about how much they love it and will continue with that ritual once lockdown is over. But of course, not every night can be a 1960s themed event whilst watching the Queen's Gambit. So at the other end of the scale, people have sought out some me time and withdrawn to watch TV separately. A lot of people mentioned watching TV in bed for the first time whilst their partner watched something different downstairs. So TV has played a really important function in people's lives, both in bringing them together with family or with distant friends, but also allowing them some kind of escape from the reality that we've all been living through in the last 12 months to find some time for themselves. So whilst the data appears contradictory, it's just showing us the power of TV to bring people together, but provide some valuable me time. We can see these patterns explained by some of the responses that we've just picked out. We had obviously thousands of responses. We asked people about the new rituals and habits that they've had around TV viewing. And we can see here mentions of family movie nights, watching box sets for the first time, binge watching crime series, everybody sitting down after dinner and watching shows on TV and enjoying that company, which they didn't do before. So it's become quite, some new rituals have definitely been established throughout this period. So that was a whistle-stop tour through what actually happened to TV viewing over the last 12 months. Now we're going to take a deeper look at the detail, because what emerges from the data collected is it's not only that people watch more TV over the last year, but what they watched has fundamentally changed. For much of the UK population, the past year has been a real journey of discovery, which has changed their taste in TV shows. Now, we've been talking about a golden age of television for some time now at Radio Times. The last decade has seen a huge shift in mindset around TV production. We've seen a huge growth in investment, and these blockbuster budgets, previously only seen in the film world, have produced some seriously quality TV. The migration of A-list Hollywood stars across to TV shows is proof of this. And the last year has seen that the UK population as a whole embrace this. Lockdown has pushed people beyond their comfort zones, beyond their usual TV viewing habits, to try stuff that they've not tried before, platforms and shows, to discover some new television. And as we can see here, 62% discovered great new shows during lockdown, 51% think there is so much good TV, and for over a third of the UK population, their taste in TV shows has changed over the last 12 months. We saw earlier that at the time of our research, 89% of the UK population could access a paid-for service, but a deeper look shows just how much paid-for access grew over lockdown. 60% of the population signed up for at least one new paid-for service. Netflix, Disney Plus and Amazon have been the most subscribed to in the last year, and we see here again the incredible success of the Disney Plus launch had, coinciding as it did with first lockdown. We can also see here the key reasons why people were signing up for more content. Now, time and money were factors, but for 45% of people, they started their new subscriptions because they wanted a greater variety of TV to watch. The additional time and money provided the opportunity to experience TV content they might not have tried before. And the great news is that having discovered these new platforms and what they have to offer, the vast majority of people are planning to keep them all. 79% state they'll keep all the platforms they currently have, and when we ask them why, they tell us that they like having that greater choice, or they've started watching a particular show on one of those platforms. But for 10%, the reason for keeping them is because they've realised just how much great TV they're previously missing out on. As we can see, 19% do plan to cancel some that they've taken up over the last 12 years, and this leaves a challenge for programme makers and the TV platforms to ensure that they are not the ones getting cancelled, or to try and change viewers' minds. We asked our respondents to think about the types of TV shows that they've watched over the past 12 months and how that compares to pre-COVID. Now, it's not at all surprising that news consumption is up. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. There's been a lot of news. And when we think back to that earlier slide about format, scheduled TV, live TV was pretty flat at 37%. And I think it's a fair deduction that news has massively contributed to that, especially given the drop in soaps and the small growth for reality TV, both hit by production issues in 2020. It's drama, comedy and real life crime which have seen the major shifts, with people seeking out new shows to watch. Lockdown has led people to look beyond their usual viewing, with 2/3 discovering great new shows. As well as that, of course, it has been a time for comfort TV and revisiting some old favourites. We've all needed some reassurance over the past 12 months, and where better than a much loved TV show. So let's just have a very quick look at what they've been watching. We asked people what new shows they discovered that they wouldn't normally have watched. And you can see a huge range here. Lots of people, The Crown came up a lot, and I suspect lots of people who have signed on to Netflix, but a massive range from, you know, like people discovering Line of Duty, Married at First Sight, Australia came up all the time. Old favourites that they've turned to again and watched from the start. Line of Duty does well here again, but also some real old favourites here. Dad's Army, Buffy. People have gone back quite a long time to find that kind of nostalgia and reassurance that they've been looking for throughout lockdown. And their lockdown highlights, the TV shows that got them through the past few months. Additional time and access to new platforms has resulted in people watching different TV to before, but this brings with it challenges. With so much quality TV around, how do they find the next great show to watch? Many people have a list of recommended shows that they constantly have a go, but also they sometimes can find it difficult to know what to watch next. So we asked them about their source of recommendations. Family and friends comes in top, it always does in every piece of research we've ever done. It plays a massively important role. But we could also clearly see the role media plays in helping people find out about great TV and about the platform themselves. TV magazines and websites are an important source of information. So just to sum up, what is the legacy of lockdown? COVID and lockdown sparked some major changes in how people watch TV. It's not at all surprising that people have watched more TV, but we've also seen changes in what they watch, who they watch with and where they watch it. UK households have developed new rituals, discovered the joy of shared viewing, but also the pleasure of watching what they want, when they want and where they want. Lockdown has pushed people beyond their usual viewing habits. More time at home, more time on their hands and disruption to some TV favourites. I mean, people have looked outside their comfort zone, outside their habitual viewing, discovered new platforms and new shows. It's changed people's taste in TV shows. They haven't necessarily stopped watching their old shows, but it's definitely broadened the shows they're willing to watch. And this change will have long-term impacts. Plus, a key feature now is that people have access to more TV. 60% of the population, as we've seen, have signed up to at least one new paid-for platform over the last year, and the majority of them plan to keep them. 89% of the population accessed paid-for TV over the last year, so as a result they have far more choice in TV. With catch-up and on-demand now universally watched, but with live schedules TV still the most frequently watched, there is just so much TV to choose from, a complete explosion of choice. And of course, as restrictions lift, a lot of people will return to their previous levels of viewing. They'll keep the variety and the choice that they've embraced during lockdown, but we expect to see time spent viewing drop back down to pre-COVID levels. That was a whole 10 hours less a week. And so this creates a challenge for the TV industry, whether it's programme makers, traditional TV channels or new platforms. The challenge to get your show chosen to be watched, or your platform, the one they choose to keep their subscription to, just got a whole lot tougher. Lockdown has fully shown the UK population what the golden age of television has to offer, and now the TV industry has to rise up to that challenge. Right, I'm now going to get Tim Glanfield to join us. Tim is the editorial director of radiotimes.com and has been working on the brand for many, many years. Tim, are you there?
I am. Hello, Ali. Hello.
Morning, how are you?
I'm very well.
So like many brands, March 2002 created a massive amounts of change, and radiotimes.com had to pivot. So Tim, in the immediate aftermath of lockdown 1 hitting in March last year, what happened?
Well, I think in the immediate aftermath, the thing we learned pretty quickly was TV was king. I think the 23rd of March 2020, 27 million people, I believe, tuned in to watch Boris Johnson announce lockdown 1. And it's one of the most watched TV events of the modern era. And, despite the myriad ways you can get information today, it was still TV that people chose to kind of watch that collectively as a nation, as one of the biggest, most momentous kind of news events in all of our lifetimes played out. But it was on TV that people chose to watch that, and it went on to continue that TV was the place that people kept being drawn back to, and obviously the daily briefings became part of many of our lives, making the stars of unlikely people like Chris Whitty and Jonathan Van Tam, who two previously anonymous civil servants going on to become kind of stars across the country. There was a huge surge in interest around what was happening with the global crisis, obviously, and this led to a huge surge generally in interest in TV because people were locked at home, and they were looking to TV to find out what was going on. So we saw pretty wild swings in what people were interested in. The public mood and sentiment was moving fast. It was a really difficult time, as I'm sure it was for everyone else on this call. There weren't any rules to follow. We were having to kind of follow public mood and sentiment, work out how we get through this, at the same time as moving to remote working. So it was we had to be fleet of foot and innovative. It was a tricky time, but what we did see is that TV is where people turned.
Okay. And what were some of the initial problems that you and the team at RT.com needed to overcome?
I think in the immediate aftermath, after working out how we make a website with all of us in our bedrooms, I think a big thing to overcome was there was just so much uncertainty and so much was getting cancelled. Immediately all of our plans kind of just went out the window. Sport stopped. That's sport on TV is an important part of what we do. Live TV production all but stopped. Lots of shows started getting cancelled or events were postponed. The Eurovision Song Contest, the Euros, the Olympics, Britain's Got Talent, The Voice, all of these things that would usually be quite key pillars in our content strategy and we've been planning for, suddenly they'd all gone. Soaps were being rationed because they were going to run out of those pretty quickly. Again, that's something that you just not, it's not something when you do your content plan in February that you're expecting, that soaps might stop, that sport might stop, films all but stopped with cinemas closing. There's a huge decrease immediately in the new content that's available in the world of entertainment. And as a brand that write about content, it's not good if global TV and film content slows down. So that was obviously an initial problem for us to overcome. What do we do?
And were there any upsides in that initial period?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it in your research. The launch of Disney Plus came at a very interesting time. Obviously launched immediately as lockdown happened. And I think, it illustrated that new content was coming, even though a lot of the scheduled content wasn't there, and that there were going to be a different way that people would look at content over the next period. I think, luckily for us, we have been investing in on demand and streaming for many years. We obviously understand it's a really important part of the TV landscape, and so it accelerated a lot of what we'd been doing. So I think upside's an interesting way of putting it, but that launch kind of accelerated a lot of what we were already doing with on demand, because Disney Plus was obviously a big talking point at the time, and the timing meant that a lot of people were looking to it. But it kind of illustrated just how important streaming was going to become. And in a sense, the whole idea of the world stopping and everyone being at home and looking to TV played to our strength as a brand. We are here, we are known for the best recommendations and the best journalism around TV and entertainment. We're trusted and unbiased, and I think that's what people needed. You know, in a world where everything's getting more complicated and more fragmented anyway in TV, and it has been for several years, that was only accelerated by the confusion around lockdown and, you know, new services arriving. So I think it kind of solidified the importance of radiotimes.com as that kind of trusted central brand in that ecosystem. So I think, you know, that was obviously something that meant that you know, it did play to our strengths. And I think also because people were at home, it allowed us to accelerate some of the things that we were already working on, which were new areas of entertainment to look at. You know, more people were at home, so we started to accelerate some of our testing around gaming and technology, and areas that we were already thinking, you know, we thought were the right way to go, but actually because there were more people at home in this initial period, we were able to start doing more tests in those areas. And actually these are areas that we now, going into 2021, are starting to invest behind more and do more in.
Okay. And after that sort of initial intake of breath at the lockdown, what did the team do to change the way that the website was dealing with content and everyone being at home?
I think the initial reaction was, you know, the news flow everywhere was negative, right? You know, it was doom and gloom across the board. X is cancelled, Y is postponed, Z has the virus, you know, and there were a few weeks where I think everyone was kind of trying to work out what's the best way of approaching this, and we were covering a lot of this stuff, and we thought it was the right thing to do because it was trying to explain to our audience what was going on with the entertainment industry, which was it had ground to a halt. But then we took a very conscious decision a few weeks in to move away from this, to kind of try and be positive, to stop reporting the doom and gloom and actually think about what are the positives here. You know, there are some things that our audience need that we can help them with. We want to be a beacon of hope rather than just telling people what's gone wrong. They already know what's gone wrong. They can see most of it and they're getting that from other sources. So we want to be part of a solution rather than just amplifying the bad news. So we took stock and we looked at the problems that our audience had and what solutions we were able to offer them. And I think, you know, obviously there was less TV being made, but there was more choice than ever on more services. So everyone was stuck at home. People felt isolated. They felt detached and anxious about their future. And they needed entertaining and being comforted. So we started experimenting and innovating, you know, using our position at the heart of the industry to see how we could help bring them closer to the shows that they loved and the TV stars that they wanted to talk to, and try and build some community around TV. And I think one of the first things we did was we focused on lots of the good things that were happening in TV and entertainment to try and tackle the problem of there not being so much live TV. So, you know, the PE lessons with Joe Wicks, the companies giving away free audiobooks, unlocking parts of their channels. And we had a really positive kind of feedback from the audience on that. And we obviously we continued trying to help people understand what they could watch, even though there was less content. So, you know, what are the new streaming services? What are all the options available to you? Not just what content's there, but actually how do you get them? How do you watch them? Because it is a complicated world now, and not everyone is, you know, even if you're pretty tech savvy, you don't necessarily know how you get all these services and how you get them on your TV. So there was a lot of kind of helping people through that process. And then we started to introduce and layer on top of that new areas. You know, you talked earlier about people in the survey results going back to nostalgic content. Well, that's an area that we looked at and we leaned into. We introduced something called lockdown binges, where our expert writers talked about stuff they were watching. We did a whole series on that, and that had a really positive response. Again, looking back at what you can get, not what's missing from your life. We also asked celebrities to make videos for us recommending what they were watching, so we could share them on social, make people feel like, you know, you're not alone in this situation, we're all in this together. And I think it was quite powerful to have big name celebrities on our social feeds, you know, saying I'm at home and I'm watching, you know, Homes Under the Hammer or whatever it might be, but, you know, making people feel like they weren't alone. And I think that was a really important part of what we did. I think also this kind of outreach led us to start thinking about new experiences we could give to our audience. And I think probably the most fundamental sort of change was to accelerate some of the live event stuff that we were already starting to plan to do and were doing, but to do it in a virtual world. So we worked initially with the producers of Call the Midwife. We teamed up with them and we decided we'd like to do a kind of watch along series with them. We asked our users to vote on which episodes they wanted to see, and once we decided on those episodes, they voted on the site. We got everyone around the world to press play at the same time on the streaming service that they use to watch an episode. Afterwards, the cast would tweet along during the show, and then afterwards we had a live Q&A with our drama editor for an hour, and we did those for 6 weeks, and they were overwhelmingly popular. The first session, I think, I had over 100,000 views, 7,500 reactions, 4,000 comments, and we did another 5 of those, and they were really popular. And after that, it kind of snowballed. We thought, well, if we can do it with one show, we should be doing it with more shows. So we spent much of the initial period of lockdown, talking to our partners, both commercial and editorial, about how we could build these experiences into the web throughout 2020. And so we ended up doing live watch-alongs and Q&As with a vast amount of different people and shows, from just a few of them Line of Duty. We had the whole cast of Line of Duty on an hour-long call. The Last Kingdom cast. We did a Normal People reunion. We worked with Ricky Gervais, Catherine Ryan, Chris Buck, who's the Oscar-winning director of Frozen. We did a Torchwood reunion with John Barrowman in the cast. We did Gangs of London. We had events with Michelle Keegan, Danny Mays, Maisie Williams. The list could go on. And it just became such a positive kind of way of working with our audience to offer them that kind of what they needed right then, which was that sense of community around TV, bringing people together. But also as a brand, it was a great opportunity for us to work much closer with the talent, to cement relationships, both editorial and commercial, with our partners to build those really great experiences.
And what did you learn during this process?
Well, a lot. I think the first one is never give up. It sometimes feels like these, when stuff like this is going on, it feels like, what's going to work, we don't know, and you just got to try. You've got to innovate, you've got to learn lessons and move on. And I think, act quickly, never give up. But I think, really importantly, listen to your audience, read their mood, discover what they need and want, and try to think of creative solutions. After all, you're there to serve your audience. And, we did that. We listened and we changed and we innovated. And I think that was really important. I think other lessons that are important: play to your strengths. Our brand is led by expert editorial people. That's what we do. That's what Radio Times as a brand has done for nearly 100 years, but radiotimes.com has done for many years. With, use your connections, use your knowledge, make sure that you give your audience the best that you can from your brand. We can get access to talent, so we gave them access to talent. We can give them exclusive, exciting experiences, and that's what we did. We gave them things they couldn't get elsewhere, and I think playing to your strengths is really important. I think also a really important lesson is work with your partners. We worked really closely with people from across the industry during this period because everyone was trying to solve similar problems, right? This was a really crazy year with huge unexpected things happening constantly. We already had very strong editorial and commercial relationships with our endemic partners, but during lockdown, we doubled down on these, from working with lots of different partners to create great experiences for our audience, to building much closer commercial partnerships, many of which were editorially led. They bred innovation and collaboration, and I think that working with partners was something that we'd obviously always done, but it really solidified some of those relationships. So it was a really interesting, fast-moving period where a huge amount of learnings came from it.
And obviously, we are now hopefully at a point where restrictions will start to ease, and we can see from the research that there's been some really fundamental changes to the way people view television. What's coming up in the future for radiotimes.com?
Well, I think, as you say, hopefully the world does start to return to some sort of normality, but the pandemic has accelerated so much that was already happening, I think, particularly in technology, and that in itself has a huge bearing on the way that we live our lives, you know, from working from home in the future to shopping online to the expectation of being able to watch what you want when you want on the device that you use. So I think scheduled TV, as we've seen, will still remain important, hugely important, around things like news, special events, sport, you know, big entertainment formats. But what we have seen and what we will see in the future is obviously streaming is an enormous part of TV. That's something that we recognise, and as we go forward this year, we are completely overhauling and upgrading our TV guide experience on the site to bring that streaming content together with the scheduled content to create a brilliant 21st century TV guide experience, so that we both have the best of scheduled TV and the best of streaming content together in a hybrid model, perhaps similar to the way a lot of people will work in the future. It's going to be the best of both worlds, and we've done a lot of work in the background to bring that together, and that's something we'll be rolling out over the next few months. It will also talk to some of the stuff in the survey about people want to be able to have curated watch lists, both from experts and also ones that they create themselves, and it will give us the ability to be able to mix and match the best content from all of the services, and for users to be able to bring that content together themselves. So I think that's something that would be really fundamental to what we take forward. I think also the interactive, exciting experiences for our audiences. We've always prided ourselves on trying to bring our audiences close to the stars, close to the shows, but I think the watch along stuff especially has the response to it's been so overwhelmingly positive that I think building on that, going into the, you know, the next phase is something that we're really keen to do. We want to keep giving our audiences the best opportunities, the best exclusive experiences, be that virtually, be that in real life, be that a blend of the two. So I think that there's a huge amount more that we'd like to do in that area, and I think importantly trying to also focus on that community element of TV. We've seen, as the research again suggested, how people are brought together by TV. We know that that happens around TV shows, around stars, around genres, and we need to continue to evolve our experience to allow our users places within the site and experiences within the site where they're able to celebrate their favorite shows, to talk about them, to bring them together around the things they really care about. And I think something that we also, you know, as I mentioned before, working much closer with our partners, that's something that the innovation that's come from the last year working with partners is something that we want to continue to develop and work much closer with partners about how we create fantastic content that works for their aims, but also is brilliant for our users and brings alive the new ways that TV is developing. You know, it's a really exciting time, and it's not just for TV, it's for TV and entertainment. You know, we've launched into gaming now, we're doing more in tech, and those are things that as we go into the future we'll be doing much more of. So I guess the key thing we'll be doing going forward is all of that stuff, but then just innovate. You know, the last 12 months we were kind of forced to innovate faster and quicker, and you know, it's been a difficult time, but also lots of great ideas come from innovating, moving fast, breaking things. And I think that's something going forward we're gonna, you know, want to keep that spirit and keep doing it, keep moving fast, keep innovating and creating great experiences for our audience and for our partners.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for sharing that with us, Tim. I'm going to take some questions now. If anybody has any questions either for me about the research or for Tim, you can just pop them into the chat, but we've had a few come through. You just touched on this slightly, but what do you think the future looks like for free-to-air terrestrial TV?
I think free-to-air terrestrial TV is a thing that's going to be around for a long time, right? I think it's a thing that people still value incredibly. And you know, as I say, I think there are certain strengths that it really plays to, and I think national events, news, certain entertainment formats, where you know that still brings people together. there's still, you look at the amount of people who are watching Line of Duty together on Sunday nights. That's still event TV. These big dramas and whodunits and that sort of thing, I think, is here to stay, even though on demand and streaming is obviously a huge force in TV, and there are lots of people who watch TV in different ways. I think there is still a large part of the TV viewing community who enjoy that collective experience. And interestingly, technology has also made it easier to share that experience. At the same time as making streaming possible, social media has made it possible to share your experience of watching Guessing Who H is in Line of Duty collectively as a nation. So I think in some ways technology has been one of the, in some ways it makes it more options to schedule TV out there, but it's in another way it's a savior of it because it makes it easier to have that collective experience. So I think there's a long and bright future for free-to-air scheduled TV, but I think that there's also clearly lots and lots of content coming from lots of other providers that are going to be a much more important part of people's lives as we go forward.
And were there any shows that are quite old shows that possibly didn't do brilliantly when they came out, that were rediscovered in lockdown and have become quite big, at least now?
Well, I mean, it wasn't so much an old show, but it was Schitt's Creek is a really good example of like a lockdown hit. It was, it's a relatively small, sort of indie Canadian TV show that had 3 series on Canadian TV, moved to Netflix, and then was discovered during lockdown, just as it was sort of coming to an end by everyone seemingly at once. And if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's perfect kind of lockdown TV. It's funny and kind and gentle, and I think that's probably one of the real examples of what these big on-demand platforms as well, the streamers, can do for shows. And I think it's clearly a great show, but it probably wouldn't have been discovered on the level it was if it hadn't have been for a streaming platform picking it up and making it a global hit.
I absolutely agree with that. Schitt's Creek got me through what was, let's face it, the longest January in history. It was an utter treat. What watch-alongs do you have planned on the site?
So we have a couple of different events that I probably can't talk about right now, but there's a couple of, I'll give you some hints. There's some major BBC dramas coming up, which we have some events hopefully planned around. We also have just launched a masterclass type series, which is called Script to Screen, which is a paid for event series where you get to ask questions and work with a kind of well-known writer and find out their secrets to making TV. So we've just done one with Jen Mercurio, who's the Line of Duty creator, and we also have one which we've just done with Mark Gatiss, who's obviously well known for League of Gentlemen, for writing Doctor Who and Sherlock. But the next one we've got planned is got Armando Iannucci, who's obviously one of the co-creators of Alan Partridge and Think of It and Veep. So we've got a session with him on the 10th of May, and we have sessions hopefully lined up around also a couple of shows coming up a little bit later on. We're hoping to have Nick Mohammed and David Schwimmer in a session around Intelligence 2, which is a Sky series that's coming out, so that's a big name. And there's a couple of others which I'm just dotting the I's and crossing the T on, so I can't tell you now, but watch this space and there'll be a couple of exciting names also coming up very soon.
And do you see that pivot that's been made to sort of virtual events sticking around even as lockdown eases?
I think so, yeah, because one of the things I think is great about virtual events is that they kind of democratize access to talent in a way that, obviously there's always been events that fans can go to, but you are restrained by the physical location. They tend to take place in major cities, major global cities, and if you can't get there or you don't have the money to get there, that means that you're not going to be able to go to the event or attend it. So I think that the virtual element makes the event not just available to everyone in the UK, but people potentially globally who are interested in a TV show or a star. And I think that's a real positive. I think going forward, there's, I'd like to explore how you have physical events that are also streamed virtually, so you can have the kind of best of both worlds, because some people do want to physically be in the room with the star to, breathe the same air as the celebrities that they know, but also, why wouldn't we explore how we can continue to have virtual series around that? And I think that would be the best way to serve our audience as well, which isn't an audience that are only based in major cities and necessarily have easy access to come to these events in real life.
And this question makes me laugh slightly. Are young people watching live TV, or is it just the oldies? I think it depends. Hesitate to mention the word oldies.
I think it depends what you consider young.
Or old.
Indeed. Yeah, I never know where I fit into all of this. I think it depends what shows is the reality. There's clearly been a trend over recent years for fewer young people, in inverted commas, to watch scheduled television in the way that they would have done in the past, because there are other options, right? And clearly some of the big streamers have had much of their success with a younger audience who are binge watching and creating content tailored to those audiences. However, look at Love Island, for example, an absolute smash hit for ITV, and their audience is primarily watching that show live, and primarily watching it live either on ITV2 or live on ITV Hub, as if they're watching it on ITV2. And that's an under 35 audience. Look at BBC's decision recently to make BBC Three back into a scheduled TV channel. They made the decision a few years ago to stop it, to turn it into online only. Now they're putting it back on Freeview. And the reason that they're doing that is they have identified there is a large proportion of young, in inverted commas, people who still watch TV like that, who discover TV like that, have a relationship with TV like that. So I think it's a great question, but it's not a simple answer. I think there's clearly a mixture of people who want scheduled TV and on demand, and I think going forward we're going to continue to see that hybrid of both. Around different types of content and around different behaviours. So I think the answer is yes, young people do want scheduled TV, but not for everything.
Yeah, and actually definitely from the research that we've done over the years with Radio Times, that I would echo that obviously the move to on demand was definitely pushed by the younger generations, but the right TV show will absolutely engage them and make them do appointment viewing. Right, I'm really aware of time. It's nearly 10 to 11, so I've just got one more question for you, Tim, because you're the person that if I ever see in the office, which obviously I haven't for over a year, I ask you what's coming up and I ask you what the shows are that I should be watching. So what are your tips for great TV coming up?
Well, there's loads coming up, which is kind of over the year. There's a lot of stuff coming up, so these are kind of long. Some of them are longer leads than others. If you want something that's coming up very soon, This Time with Alan Partridge season 2 starts next week, which, if you like Alan Partridge, will please you. It's fantastic again. So it's the kind of, I can't believe it's been 30 years of Alan Partridge being around, but it's the kind of one show rip-off type idea with him and Susanna Fielding as his co-star. It's fantastic. So it starts next week. There's Landscrapers is coming up on Sky Atlantic soon, which stars Oscar-winning Olivia Colman, telling the story of Mansfield Garden body murders. That's going to be a big show. Sort of slightly further away, you've got things like Loki coming to Disney Plus, which is a long-awaited Marvel series starring Tom Hiddleston, which sees Loki traveling as irresponsibly through time as you might expect. You've got sometime this year, which is going to be a big one, Amazon have got their Lord of the Rings. There's an 8-part first season of that. I believe they've already ordered a second season, but that's going to be a huge show. Mosquito Coast is coming to Apple TV as a TV series, which I think will be a big hit. That's a TV adaptation of Paul Theroux's book. Yes, that is Louis' dad. and interestingly, the starring role in the show is Justin Theroux, and that's Louis' cousin. So it's a family affair, that one. There was a film of that in the 80s with Harrison Ford, but it's a really compelling story about a family who uproot to go and live in Latin America. You've got a couple of others. You've got Anatomy of a Scandal coming to Netflix, which is from David E. Kelly, who's the guy who did Big Little Lies and The Undoing. So that stars Sienna Miller, Michelle Dockery, and Rupert Friend. That's coming relatively soon to Netflix. And you've got BBC Amazon co-production of The Pursuit of Love, which has got a really big cast. You've got Lily James, Emily Mortimer, Dominic West, Andrew Scott. And that's a retelling of a story about a pair that embark on a trip across Europe to find love between the wars. There's lots and lots of other stuff, but I think, obviously you've got lots of things coming back. Stranger Things 4, hopefully, Sex Education Series 3, which we're looking forward to, and one of my all-time favorites, hopefully at some point this year we'll get another season of Succession, which I think is one of the best shows that's being made right now. So there's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some stuff that's coming up.
Brilliant. Plenty to keep us busy. Well, thank you, Tim, for joining us this morning, and thank you everybody for joining us this morning. If you have any further questions about the research, then you can either get in touch with me or one of the Radio Times sales teams. If you want any more news about what radiotimes.com is doing or Radio Times magazine, then do just get in touch. We're happy to share further details. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.